Okay, so hopefully, recording here, what you're seeing right now is my Revit 2020. That's what you should be seeing. And I'm just going to go to open an existing file. And in my lecture 15 folder, like you would normally have on the network, um, you should have a copy of this file that you could download for intermediate massing. And at first glance, when you get in this file, once it opens, it's in a 3D view and it's got the two datums or the two levels that we had in here, but it doesn't look like there's anything here, okay? And you would say, well, this is an empty free-form file, Joel. Why did you do this, kind of do this to us? Well, what I want you to always do is whenever you get in a drawing or a model like this, it's always good to go in and see what masses exist. And in order to do that, you have to click on, because remember, if I go to visibility graphics and I go down, by default, what did we say? Mask does not show up. But instead of going here to turn it on, you can always go over here and say show mask by view settings and click on show mask form and floors. So now once we click on that, you see that's active. Now we have a somewhat interesting mask form in our model. And so I wanted everybody to kind of start on the same in the same place, because I wanted us to be able to look at this mask and do a couple of things. And what do I mean by do a couple of things? Well, to kind of answer a question Sarah had the other day, she talked about angular reference planes. And I want to show you a function. And it's just one that kind of, when she was asking the question the other day, sometime when you're teaching and doing things on the fly, you're hearing a question and maybe you're not thinking about it the right way. So I think I had an opportunity to think about it properly. So I'm going to go ahead and go to that level one. But what I'm going to do is click on here and go into the in place edit, right? And with the in place edit, now I'm going to go to a south elevation, right? And in this south elevation, I've got this kind of cool, funky, interesting shape that I'm using. But in this elevation, what I can do is go to the reference plane function. And what I can do is start a reference plane, maybe somewhere like up here above that. And then maybe at a 30-degree angle, right? Maybe, yeah, 30. We'll try 30 at first. I'll put in this angular reference plane, kind of like she was asking, and I'll just call it number one, right? And in order to work on that reference plane, you remember the other day we talked about setting and showing reference planes. So how would I go about drawing on this reference plane? Because in here I can't see it. But remember, in order to see it, now that I've set one up, I can say set work plane, and then I get the option to say reference plane one, right? And then I can click on the show feature, and now there's my angular reference plane, kind of like Sarah was asking about. Now that I'm on there, there's another function that we haven't talked about yet. It's called viewer, work plane viewer. And what the work plane viewer will do, once I click on that, right, it brings this up over here. Now, if I hit zoom extents, I'm not getting anything. I'm not seeing anything, right? But what I want to do is I want to set a work, I've got this work plane set, but now I want to draw on it, right? So once I start to try and draw on it, watch what, we'll see if something happens over here. Let's go over here and let's get this rectangle, right? I'll click on rectangle and then I'll say I want to draw on work plane. And this is the work plane I want to draw on, right? And so let's try it one more time. Draw on work plane. So I'll kind of move around and I can now draw a what? This rectangle on there. And let's see about maybe drawing a circle on there too, just for grins, okay? So over here, maybe I'll just draw a circle somewhere over here that overlaps it a little, okay? So I've got those two things. Now I can come in here, and when I come in this view, I'll click here and I'll click here, and now I can say create form, and I'll say give me a solid form, right? It says it's unable to create a form element. Why can't I create a form element, right? If I click on one, right, and click on it, then all of a sudden it creates a form element, right? And now I've got that form element. then I can take this other one. So I couldn't do them both at the same time. So I wanted you to kind of see that. I click on that second one and I say create form, and it creates a solid form. And now I can pull on and adjust that, kind of like what we talked about the other day. And maybe I can extrude that into my space. And then I can grab this one. And now that I click that, look what becomes active. My work plane viewer that you're seeing over to the side. I'll make it a little smaller. But that work plane viewer, you can see it's letting you look as if you are what? You're operating on that surface. Now, I like to, and you're going to have a personal preference, I like to operate in 3D a little more. But you see, if I click there, now I'm moving my work plane. I don't want to do that. All I want to do is click on that one portion of it. But if I click on that one portion, it moves the viewer. So I have to what? I don't click on just one part of it. Let's see if I hover and tab, and now I click on it, right? Then I can change some of the features of it that way. So I can maybe change this to 15, right? So now it's changed to 15, and I could say finish mask in this instance. So I'll close my work plane viewer, and then maybe I'll say hover on this side, tab, and maybe I want it to be a little further down. Maybe I want to say make this, I don't know, 25'0", right? So now that I've got that taken care of, I can say finish mask. And so now this is all one mask object, okay? And interestingly enough, you know, this isn't necessarily something that I would normally do, but I really wanted you to see that you could draw on an angular type reference plane, okay? Just seeing that and getting a little practice with it will help you to kind of just know that you can draw on an angular surface and have an opportunity to create interesting shapes. So if you wanted to create a shape that made sense, you know, maybe I'd go back in here in this instance, go edit in place and say, hey, you know, I don't need this object here. Maybe I'd say, I don't want that object there, or, you know, I don't want that object there either. You know, let's go back to a self elevation and let's maybe change the angle of this reference plane. You know, it's 30 degrees here. Maybe I only want it to be 15 degrees. I don't know. And then maybe I can move it up some. So I'll hold down shift and hit this. And then can I just rotate this thing? Well, sure. You know, will it let me rotate it another direction? Sure. Let me rotate it straight. It also, I can come in and say, let's rotate it more to here. Or can I align my reference plane? Whoops, let's try aligning it, right? So if I go align to this line right here, now my reference plane is aligned to one of my interesting, what do you call it? I'm sorry, not level one. It's aligned to one of my lines that was actually there. And now if I want to go on there and say, draw on this reference plane again, now I can maybe draw more of a free-form shape on here. So I can say draw on work plane, and I can say, now I'm going to try and make a shape that sort of is a little more organic or out of the ordinary. And then I can say, maybe I can do this, you know, let's see if I can get a, you know, something odd like that, you know, and then I can say create form and make it a solid form. And again, you know, I can grab one of my directional, whoops, let's try that again. Let me hover, tab, click. Once I've created that form, sorry, let me grab that surface now. Hold on a second. So maybe I can kind of drag one of these back this direction. You see, if I drag that back, how the reference plane moves with it, right? So you got to be careful how you move these things, because, you know, you may not be getting exactly what you wanted. If you see how that reference plane is moving, and maybe we should have done something before we drew that. Let's see what maybe we could have done. Let's go backwards for a second, right? Before I drew anything else, let me go back to this south elevation, and look at this reference plane, right? Can I, when I align something, can I lock that reference plane, right? So maybe locking that reference plane might be helpful for us in this instance. And if we go back here now and I do that same thing, let's see what we get. And again, people, I'm just, just kind of freestyling here with the shape. There's no real rhyme or reason to what I'm doing, but I just want you to see that you can set up a kind of reference plane on an angle and then create a solid form, right? And then take that form. I'm trying to get the face this time. There we go. Okay. And kind of stretch it the direction I want to stretch it. And that's the hard part, people, getting it to kind of work the way you want it to work and get it to extrude the way you want it to extrude. All right. So now I can say finish this mask, and I've got this weird shape that's in there. But again, I wasn't trying to draw anything that was of any substance in that instance. I just really wanted you to see that you could draw, and that's on a reference plane that's aligned to a surface. People, another way to handle this, and the video's running a little long, but that's okay because it's going to give you a chance to play with it. I could go here and I could turn off this, and maybe I would be able to, let's see if I can draw on a face, right? We didn't try that yet. So if I say rectangle, can I draw on a face, right? And let's see if it'll let me pick that face. Or what if I go here and hit tab, 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 click, and then I say, let's see if it lets me draw on the face now. I've never really tried this before. It's saying that's the face that I had selected. And so maybe this might be a better option. And then let's maybe put a funky little curve in it just to make it look a little organic. And then if I grab that, I can say create form and make a solid form that way. And so now that's more on that face. And so now I can raise it up or drag it back and turn it from a solid to maybe a void if I wanted to make a hole in it. So there's a lot of different things you can do with massing. That's the first thing I want you to see. But you can change that solid form, and I can go back in and edit it in place, and then maybe grab it again, and say make it a solid form and drag it back out and finish the mask. Okay, so again, I can also come in here and go here and say edit in place and say cut geometry, and say it says select the geometry to be cut. So what if I click this and then I click that, right, and say finish mask, right? I've got a hole in it, so I use this to cut that geometry now. Right. So again, lots of cool things to play with. Not the complete direction we're going today, but just kind of answering that question and just showing you a technique that you could use. So I'll go ahead and wrap this up, and then we'll start on the next video.